Good morning, fellow gardeners. We're back talking a little about my life when I was a child. I look back and see how the Lord led. I just want to share that with you. If it's something you don't want to hear, don't go listen to it. It's okay. It's not for everyone. But I hope here as I get on into this, my life a little older, where I can see what God was doing, I can share with you to encourage you, encourage your young people, or to look unto God and to go for what you have planned in your life. Anyway, you know, this preacher preaching fire and brimstone, you know, talking about he burned you for 1,000,000 years and you just begin to burn, fixing to burn another 1,000,000 or 2,000,000. And I was only 6 now, remember. I was only 5.5, 6. I would say I was about 6, 5.5 to 6. But anyway, here I am, a little child, thinking about this burning for millions and millions of years, while the people that accepted Jesus lives from now on. Not just 1,000,000, not 10,000,000, not 100,000,000 years, just on and on. And I thought, why would God burn someone for millions and millions of years for just living a bad life for 60 years? That wasn't fair. God wasn't being fair if he burned people like that for so long for only living 60 years of sinful life upon this earth. And I always was puzzled about that, thought about that a lot. Even when I was driving the tractor, even when I was sitting at the fruit stand. But anyway, let me show you how God works in your life that you know nothing about. I got into the 2nd grade, and they had closed a country school down. It's out about 3 or 4 miles on past where we lived, and brought those kids into this city school, the town school, because there wasn't enough kids out there to keep it going, I guess. And there happened to be one little girl that came into our 2nd grade that came from that school out there, and she became my little girlfriend in the 2nd grade. You know, we played out on the playground. You know, I know at the morning recess and the evening recess, and we used to join hands and hold hands, you know, and somebody would run and try to break through. And of course, I know when she was chosen, she always tried to run through and break my hand loose, you know, from whoever I was holding with. And you know how little boys and girls do, have little girlfriends and boyfriends. And she don't, you know, she was my little girlfriend right on through the grades, from that 2nd grade right on through the 10th grade, off and on. Now we had times, you know, we'd have other little boyfriends and girlfriends, I guess. We didn't go anywhere. We were just claiming each other, I guess, and kind of flirted on the school ground. When I got to be 15 and a half, I was driving, I drove a pickup 10 and 15 miles down backcountry roads to a hayfield when I was 12 and 13, 14 years old, working in the hayfields that we were cutting for Mr. Tom Bly, he owned the hayfield that we had there at Wynnewood, and he had another one on down at Davis, and I'd drive that back roads in that old pickup to go down there. And by then, now I'm 12 and 13, I was cutting hay for him when it was time to cut. He had like 600-700 acres of hay. You'd go around it for 2 hours to get all the way around the hayfield. Anyway, when I got 15 and a half, I'm going to skip a lot of this that's not pertaining to me being a Christian, I don't guess. I mean, I didn't do anything wrong. I worked. I was a I worked 7 days a week for Daddy. You know, cutting hay, raking hay, running the fruit stand, just things like that. But anyway, when I got 15 and a half, I could take that old pickup and drive around a back road and go up to the little town, which was 6 miles away, of Pauls Valley. And there was a little road I could go back around a back road and get in the north side of Pauls Valley to where my little girlfriend was babysitting for her sister's little boy. She had a little boy, and she was babysitting her sister's little boy. He was about 2 years old. See, Virginia would have been 15, and I was 15. We're both same age. And anyway, I was there on a Sunday afternoon, sitting on the couch, just visiting with her and watching the little boy play. And a knock came on the door. And she got up and opened the door, and it was a man dressed in a suit with a tie. And she knew him, and she invited him in. And he sat over in the rocking chair, and she and I and the little boy was there on the couch. And he was talking to her about how they missed her and her sister at church the last couple of weeks because, you know, they wasn't there. And she had to explain, well, her sister worked rotate shifts at the state school, and she had to work the last two Saturdays. She had to work on her job out there for the state, and that they would be back to church the next Sabbath. And so anyway, he had prayer with us and invited me to come with them, and my mouth was dropped open. I know he could tell I was flumgasted, you know, to think. I thought I was the only one on earth that thought that Saturday was a Sabbath, and here it was, my little girlfriend was a Sabbath keeper. And of course, after he left, then she told me, she said, I guess you realize now that we go to church on Saturday instead of Sunday. As I was saying, as the pastor left, she and I talked a little about this, her believing in the Sabbath, and we were both amazed that we felt the same way about the Sabbath. You think God doesn't plan ahead? God planned our lives back there before we were ever born. But you see how He put it together. He closed that little school out there, put her in the classroom that I was in. There was another classroom of the second grade that she could have got in, but she got in the classroom I was in. And then we grew up kind of claiming each other's boyfriend and girlfriend, not knowing what was ahead of us. God works in mysterious ways. Remember that. He knows what He's doing. He can plan your life ahead of time for you. On June the 9th, between our junior and senior year, her aunt and uncle took us to Gainesville, Texas, and we were married on a Saturday night. In 1956. Sunday, that next morning, that was Saturday night, we got back home probably 11:30, 11 o'clock, something like that. Her mother and dad were in Arkansas for the weekend. And so we stayed there at the house. They knew we were going to get married. And this couple, this uncle and aunt, had to go along and be the witnesses and sign off for it because we were still young. That next Sunday morning, the next morning after we got married on Saturday night, the next morning early, we were in the hay field baling hay. And that night, we hauled hay with an old truck I had. And that's the way we were making money there in the summertime. Now that was in June, then we had July and August. I went back to school, and starting in September, whenever school opened up, I went back to finish my last year of high school. She chose not to go back. I went to work and went down to the local grocery store and asked Mr. Thurman if he needed any after school help, and he says, I do. I need you to work after school every day, and then I'll work on Saturday and Sunday. Guess what? He paid me he's paid me $17 a week. $17 a week for 2 full days and 5 evenings from about 4 till 9 at night. Now, because of me running a fruit stand back, he knew my dad and I real well, and because he knew that we had run fruit stands out at the house, and he asked me about would I be the produce manager for him. Here it is, a boy 16 years of age, and he turns the produce department over to this kid, me. And I tried to do him the best job I knew how. It was a little different from what I was used to, but I knew how to make produce look nice, shine apples and things like that. And I did him a beautiful job. He always told me, he never will let a week go but what, Leon, you're doing a wonderful job as a produce manager for me. I've never had my produce look this good to people now, and our sales are increasing every week. And after me working there for a little while, he even got brave enough to go off on the weekend and leave me as the manager of the store. And I had the keys to everything. I had the combination to the safe and everything. And he'd go off for a weekend and leave me there managing the store and the produce market too. In 2 years of that, I was doing him a good job. Of course, out of school, I was making a little more money than the $17 a week. But Guild Edge Dairy came along. They delivered milk to a store. They needed a driver on the wholesale route that was making this store plus the rest of the town and Pauls Valley and some of the other towns around. And Ben Penix, the manager of that Guild Edge department there in Pauls Valley, asked me if I wanted the job. He knew I was a good worker and he had got acquainted with me. Here I was, 18 years of age. And it gave me an opportunity to make serious money if I worked the job right. And so I thought about it. Virginia and I prayed about it. I wasn't going to church now. She was going to church on Saturdays. I wasn't. I was working. I had to show her that I could make her a living as a husband. And so we decided that I would take that job because we had good potential to make good money because it paid a commission and plus a salary. And if I could increase the volume of sales, then it increased the pay on that job. Well, I accepted the job and gave Mr. Thurman the 2-week notice that I needed to give him that I was going to quit and run the milk route. Mr. Thurman cried like a baby. He had lost his hand that he could trust to take care of his things while he was gone on a weekend. And I explained to him that it would be such a good deal for me and I could make so much more money than he could pay me. And he finally realized that he couldn't hold me back as a young man trying to make a living for a family. And he gave me his blessings. And every day I delivered milk to his store for him and 70 other stops and stores and cafes. My first month's check was $1,150 for a month. Remember now how I was making about $50 a week for him. That's $200 a week. I went from $200 a week to $200 a month to $1,150 a month. That's quite an increase. And in 1 year now of running that route, of the milk route, had 70 stops. I got up at 4 o'clock and started my milk route. I wouldn't get back in till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And then I had to load my truck. And we had to fix the books. I had to work the books. And my wife would do the books while I was loading the truck. And then we'd go home and sleep for usually thing from about 11 until 3:30 the next morning. And I was up and gone on the route again. In 1 year, we doubled the volume of milk and ice cream that was being sold on that route when I took it over. I had less spoils than any wholesale route with the company. Now the company couldn't figure out how I had so small amount of spoilage. In other words, you put something in the store, whipping cream or half and half or something like that, or buttermilk, and you know it had about a 10 or 12 day lifespan on it. But let me tell you what I did. On these little stores, I would put it in there and for 2 days, and if it didn't sell, I would pull it back out and put another new one in and take that one on to a bigger store and let it sell with still a 10-day spoil date on it. So I had plenty of time to sell it in that big store. And I kept all my, that's where you always had the spoilage, was on these little stores, because they sold slower than your big stores. They run it, if you kept it pulled to the front right, put your fresh behind, then you never had any old milk much. Or we didn't ever have any milk, because it sold so fast. We'd have buttermilk or half and half or whipping cream, something like that. And in 1 year, we had doubled the volume we were selling on that route. And my wife would go down and pull the milk up front and go get milk out of the back and put more. She'd get some of the workers there at the store to bring that milk around, and she'd put it in that there, and that helped them keep more milk out to sell, and so they were happy too. And that Christmas, when they had their Christmas party for all of the Gilt Edge Dairy from all over the state, we went to Norman, Oklahoma, and of course they blowed my tail full of smoke because I had doubled the route in 1 year. I had less spoilage of any route of dairy Gilt Edge milk had. Well, guess what? February 1 came, and they came around and announced that they were splitting my route. Well, they split the route and gave the 20 good stores to the other route, leaving me with 50 stores in the little towns to run. So I went on and accepted that I would take that little route around the little towns. Still had 50 stops, but lost my 20 big stops. When you're handed lemons, what do? You were told to make lemonade, and exactly what we did. I started cleaning the boxes, putting more milk in there a little bit at a time. My wife would go and pull my bigger stores up that were selling out, and that I had milk in the back room, and they would pull that up for me. And in 2 more years, my wife and I had doubled that route that they gave me. I had now had 65 stops. I had picked up 15 more customers, that stores that didn't have Gilt Edge milk in them, they asked for it, or either I went to them and asked them if I could put it in, and they would give me a little spot in the dairy box, and I worked that for them. They divided my route again because I had doubled that route back up to what it was before they took and split my route. I was still making $2,000 a week now. And that was big money back there then. I'm sorry, $2,000 a month. That was big money back there in the early 60s. $2,000 a month, not many people made that. My wife was still going to church and coming home on Saturday afternoon, and when we laid in bed at night, she would tell me what the preacher said during the sermon. It burned in within my heart. I knew I should be keeping Saturday as a Sabbath, but I couldn't because I had a big route, had to work it 6 days a week, but I knew I needed to be keeping Saturdays as Sabbath. And the only thing I could figure out, she and I figured out, is I need to quit and get me a job that I didn't have to work on Saturday. Well, I knew not to ask if I could be off on Saturday because that's the biggest, busiest day of the week and they wouldn't let you off. I knew that. And so I turned in my time. My manager liked to flip his lid. He said, I need you on that route. And I said, but I need to quit. I'm going to another job. He said, you can't make money like that. I said, well, I'll try. I'm going to live for the Lord. I'm going to keep Saturday as a Sabbath. And so I'm going to commercial fishing in Lake Texoma where I can pick my days to work. I can be off on Saturday and go to church, and then I can work Sunday through Friday fishing, commercial fishing. And that's what I did. I sold my stock that I had built up in the dairy business over the couple of years and took that money. Okay, like I was saying, when the battery went dead on us, we had to get another battery and put in. Sorry about that. Like I was saying, I sold my stock in Gilt Edge because I had told the company I was quitting. I was going to go to work for myself, commercial fishing, so I could keep Saturdays the Sabbath. So I took my funds and took my last check and went and bought me a used boat and motor. Went and bought some, I ordered some netting and some leads and some corks and some mainline cord, you know, from the Memphis Nylon Net Company in Memphis, Tennessee. And so my dad helped me make 3 nets, teaching me how to make them. We made them 100 yards long. That's as long as a football field. We made 3 of them. And I told him, you know, I see how to make them. I can make them now. And so then my wife, she started helping me make them after I'd go run my nets and come back. Then she and I would make nets all day while the kids were at school. We had rented an old house right up on the hill from the lake, overlooking it as a big ranch house that had been there for years and had a porch all the way up 3 sides of it. It was a clean house. It wasn't a new, it was an old house. It wasn't a new one. And so anyway, we were renting that for $50 a month, and I'd paid $50 down on that house. You know, back then they didn't make you pay first and last month. You just paid the first month, and then every 30 days is due $50 again. From Mr. Drummond's, A.A. Drummond's, there, he was a rich businessman there in Marshall County. He was a big rancher, had lots of land out there, and he had businesses in town. He and his wife had even built the Fran Drummond daycare in Medill where they could take care of the children while the people worked in town and everything. He was a businessman that spent a lot of his money helping the community. Now folks, this next 6 months had a lot of bearing on the rest of my life. Remember, I was there about 22 years old, I guess, where I was about at this time. Still learning how to live life. You know, wasn't a professional at it. But anyway, that time that I'm telling you about now, I'm kind of walking a little slow on it, telling you about it because it's important. Because this can change your life when you make decisions in times like this. But it didn't take about a week after we started tying them nets, and I had nets in the water. But I'd run them and I wouldn't catch any fish hardly. I mean, I couldn't even hardly pay for the gas I was putting in the boat. And I'm going to tell you, gas at that time was like 19.9 cents a gallon. And I'm going to stop and tell you a little something. I remember here in the next future there of this time that they had a war on gas in Ardmore, Oklahoma, and there was one or two stations over there running it for 9.9. And of course, this is after I'd started making a little money, so I took me two 55-gallon drums over, metal drums over, and I got me 100 gallons of gas and paid them $9.99 for 100 gallons of gas, because that would run my boat motor for a long time. But anyway, back to the story. Anyway, I'd move them and I still wouldn't catch many fish. I mean, it just wasn't my, I just couldn't find any fish anywhere where I was moving them. You know, my dad was catching fish in that area. There was 3 other men that were fishing in the same area of the lake that my dad and I were, and they were all catching some fish, but not me. I just knew the Lord was testing me at all it could be, because my nets were was newer than theirs, setting them out there in the waters, kind of on the same way, coming off the shelf, down into the river and back up on the other side. Ain't no reason why they couldn't catch a fish like the rest of them did, but they wasn't. And anyway, I'm going to finish our story. I'm going to stop our story right here. And if you like this, punch the button, ring the bell. If you hadn't subscribed, excuse me, I'd like for you to subscribe, because help us to get on up to that 100,000. We're getting closer. Comment, and if you're enjoying these, or if you think I'm helping you any at all or doing anything for you, I'm not trying to brag. I'm just trying to tell you what I've done in my life. Well, then give me little comments. I'll try to get in and find them and read them, and we'll try to make you another video if you like these. Thank you.